June 4th, 1942, 0700 hours, Pacific Ocean, 240 nautical miles northwest of Midway Atoll. Sub-Lieutenant Morio Chigusa stood on the flight deck of the aircraft carrier Akagi, watching his Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber taxi toward the bow. He had just returned from the first strike wave against Midway Island, part of a 108-aircraft assault that had pounded American installations with high-explosive bombs. The mission had gone well, though not perfectly. Anti-aircraft fire was heavier than expected. His rear gunner was wounded. Shrapnel had punctured the fuselage. But they had made it back. From his vantage point, the Kido Butai, Japan's carrier striking force, stretched across the horizon. 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Kiryu, screened by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. It was the most powerful naval force Japan had ever assembled for 6 months. It had dominated the Pacific, striking Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, Port Darwin, Ceylon. Never defeated, never even seriously challenged. To Chigusa, it looked invincible. But as he climbed from his cockpit, he sensed something was wrong. The flight deck was chaos, not the controlled urgency of combat operations, but a dangerous, overcrowded scramble. Aircraft were parked wingtip to wingtip. Fuel lines snaked across the wooden planking. Ammunition carts blocked walkways. Bombs and torpedoes lay exposed on dollies. He understood immediately. The entire air group was in the middle of a massive rearmament operation. When they had launched at dawn, their aircraft carried Type 99 land attack bombs, designed for runways, hangars, fuel dumps. But while they were over Midway, reconnaissance had spotted American naval forces. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo had ordered an immediate switch to anti-ship ordnance, Type 91 aerial torpedoes, and armor-piercing bombs. The problem was time. Rearming below deck in the hangar would take hours. Nagumo wanted the strike launched within the hour, so everything was being done on the open flight deck. Fueled aircraft, live ordnance, volatile fuel, all exposed to the sky. Chigusa, a veteran of every major operation since Pearl Harbor, recognized the danger. This was not just inefficient, it was catastrophic. In pre-war war games, umpires had ruled that carriers caught in mid-rearmament would suffer devastating losses if attacked. Senior officers had dismissed those scenarios as unrealistic. The Americans won't be that aggressive, they'd said. Now, standing amid the clutter, Chigusa wondered if they'd been wrong. By 10:15 a.m., the rearming was nearly complete. Most aircraft now carried torpedoes or armor-piercing bombs. The strike force was almost ready. Just a few more minutes, and they could launch against the American carriers. Above, Japanese Zero fighters flew combat air patrol, but at low altitude, drawn down by waves of American torpedo bombers that had been attacking since 0920. Those attacks had seemed futile. Obsolete TBD devastators, flying slow and low, had been slaughtered by Zeros and anti-aircraft fire. Of the 41 torpedo bombers that attacked that morning, only 6 would return. Not a single torpedo hit. Some officers on Akagi's bridge had even laughed. They have no spirit, no coordination. But Chigusa wasn't laughing. He had seen the ferocity of Midway's defenders. These weren't the actions of a broken enemy. And the persistence of those torpedo attacks, pilots pressing home hopeless runs, dying by the squadron, bothered him. Why sacrifice so completely unless they were buying time? His eyes scanned the high sky. 15,000 feet, 20,000 feet. That's where dive bombers would come from. That's where the real threat lay. But the sky was empty. The Zeros were all down low. A chill ran down his spine. At 10:22 a.m., Lookout screamed, dive bombers overhead. Chigusa looked up. Against the bright sun he saw them. Dozens of SBD Dauntlesses, rolling into near-vertical dives. They had approached undetected at high altitude, hidden by the chaos below. The geometry was perfect. The first bomb struck Akagi amidships at 10:24 a.m. A 1,000-pound armor-piercing round that punched through the wooden flight deck and detonated in the hangar bay, where fueled and for launch. The explosion was apocalyptic. A geyser of flame shot 100 feet into the air, carrying wreckage, equipment, and men. Secondary detonations followed instantly, bombs cooking off, torpedoes exploding, fuel igniting in rivers of fire. Chigusa was thrown to the deck by the concussion. When he rose, hell had broken loose. Aircraft exploded where they stood. Men ran screaming, many on fire. The forward deck became an inferno. Through smoke and heat, he glimpsed the other carriers. Kaga, less than a mile away, was also burning, hit by 4 bombs in rapid succession. Soryu, further out, was engulfed bow to stern after 3 direct hits. In 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers were mortally wounded. The vulnerability Chigusa had sensed, the crowded decks, exposed ordnance, full fuel tanks, had turned each carrier into a floating bomb magazine. It required on Akagi's bridge. Admiral Nagumo stood frozen, watching his fleet die. In 20 minutes, he had gone from commanding the Pacific's dominant naval force to overseeing 3 burning wrecks. Below deck, damage control was futile. Fire mains were ruptured, power failed. The hangar bay became an inferno, with steel beams warping in the heat. Men trapped below decks died in flames or drowned as compartments flooded. By 10:46 a.m., the order came to abandon ship. Chigusa helped wounded comrades to the flight deck edge. Below, destroyers maneuvered close, throwing lines and lowering nets. The sea was slick with oil, a rainbow sheen that could ignite at any moment. He took a breath, said a prayer to his ancestors, and jumped. The cold Pacific knocked the wind from him. His soaked flight suit dragged him under. He kicked hard, lungs burning, until he broke the surface. Around him, hundreds of men swam or floated, some strong, some struggling, many already dead. Hauled aboard a destroyer, wrapped in a blanket, he watched Akagi burn. So did Kaga and Soryu. All would sink by day's end. Later, American dive bombers found Hiryu and destroyed her too. In one day, Japan lost 4 fleet carriers: Akagi, 36,500 tons; Kaga, 38,200 tons; Soryu, 18,000 tons; Hiryu, 20,200 tons. 248 aircraft, over 3,000 men, including nearly all of Japan's irreplaceable carrier-qualified pilots. This was not just a tactical defeat. It was a strategic collapse. Japan had entered the war with approximately 1,500 experienced naval aviators. By 1944, Japanese carrier pilots had fewer than 100 flight hours, many with no carrier landing experience. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy, drawing on civilian flight schools and standardized curricula, could train a pilot in 6 months. In 1942 alone, America commissioned 7 fleet carriers. By war's end, it operated over 100 carriers of all types. Chigusa understood this as he sat on the destroyer's deck, watching the horizon burn. The illusion of invincibility, fostered by 6 months of victories, had been shattered not by superior Japanese spirit, but by American planning, coordination, and timing. The torpedo bomber attacks, so seemingly futile, had been a sacrifice. They drew Zeros down to sea level, disrupted Japanese formations, and bought time for dive bombers to approach undetected. It was a coordinated, deliberate plan, executed with precision, despite horrific losses. Chigusa survived the war. He later wrote in his journal, "We'd been told we were invincible. We'd believed it. We'd won every battle for 6 months. But in 5 minutes at Midway watching the Akagi burn, I understood that we'd never been invincible. We'd just been lucky. And at Midway, our luck ran out. Japan would build new carriers, Taiho, Shokaku, Zuikaku, but they could not replace the institutional knowledge, the combat experience, the human capital lost that day. The Battle of Midway marked Japan's high water mark. Everything after was retreat, attrition, and grinding defeat. For the men of the Kido Butai, June 4, 1942, was not just a battle lost. It was the moment they realized the war was already over. The Battle of Midway endures not as a tale of heroism alone, but as a lesson in the machinery of modern war, where intelligence, timing, and systemic resilience outweigh even the most elite forces. If you value history told with rigor, respect, and depth, if you believe the men who lived these events deserve more than myth or melodrama, we invite you to subscribe. This channel is dedicated to preserving the real story of World War II, not as entertainment, but as legacy. Because for those who served, and for those who remember them, truth is the highest form of honor.